Today in the show, we have Daryle Hawkins. Daryle is an award-winning graphic designer who's made waves on and off the field. His work ranges from professional sports team jerseys to high fashion streetwear. He currently works full-time at Nike World Headquarters on top of helping small businesses in brand strategy. And before we jump into design, we're going to talk a little bit about his American football career. It's absolutely fascinating. Watch some of his videos on YouTube. It's going to be a great talk. So great to meet you, Daryle. How you doing?
Awesome. Excited to be connecting with you from Portland, Oregon, all the way across the pond in Zoom culture, which is pretty sweet that we can be like so globally connected, even in the middle of the day, my time.
I've gotten good at subtracting 10 to the amount of hours to work out the time distance, because I'm always like, when I'm interact with a lot of guys from America, and like most of the guys in Los Angeles, so like if it's like 9 o'clock here, I add 2, which means it's 11 o'clock in the morning for them, and sometimes it's just like when I'll wake up in the morning and I'll get like an hour of messages, but yeah, I just really appreciate you taking the time to come on, buddy.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have a nice little chat.
I'm sure we're going to learn a lot, and your audience is going to learn a lot. But before we start, I'm just going to say a little prayer that God would bless our conversation. So, dear Father in heaven, I pray for this conversation. I pray that you would reveal yourself through our words, and you would guide this conversation, and the insights that we bring forth will bring glory to you, and bless Daryle and his work and his day and his future. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So I watched your TED Talk, and there's so many interesting points on that there where you got started with your career, and you must have worked for like what made you decide to actually get into the football game in the first place?
That's, man, you're making me go way, way back. Okay, so I was 9 years old when I first started playing American football. My stepdad actually was a coach, and it was a good way for us to bond. I was a pretty like physical kid. I also had like a lot of stuff in my background where it's like, just dealing with like my parents had gotten divorced when I was really young, and I had like a lot of pent up aggression. And so they're like, maybe you should just go out and play football. This is a good place to take out some of that energy and aggression. And I ended up thriving in it at a pretty young age. So 9.
And do they use the same kind of tackles and gameplay as they do in the NFL, even at young age?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's 100% full contact. Of course, we're like little bobbleheads running around out there trying to learn the fundamentals of the game. But I mean, at the same time, you're running the same kind of strategy, like cover 2s and blitzes and all that type of stuff. My dad was the coach, so obviously he's training me at a very high level to learn and understand the game.
I watched your video on YouTube. You've got this video that's like highlights of your gameplay, and about 10 seconds into the video, you like dive head first, and this other guy dives head first into you, and like, I'm just looking at that from a physics background and say, what can go wrong there? Can you break your neck doing this kind of tackles? I mean, or is it just like one guy backs off because he doesn't want to jump in at the same time? Is that?
Well, actually, funny that you mentioned that, because oftentimes, and maybe this is just more psychological than anything, but people more often than not get hurt when they're not going full speed, or when they let their body relax, or when they kind of come into more of a submissive state, because I think like your body starts to go limp, and that's when you're more at risk of injury, just from what I've personally experienced. So usually when you're going full speed and someone else is going full speed, more often than not, because you're like 2 fists coming together, you can glance off of each other. And so, it's 2 like firm contact points where you'll connect and then tackle, or connect and go down, or connect and glance, versus if one side is more loose and the other side is firm, that's when this person more often than not gets hurt, just because their body's not protecting itself in the way that it normally does. Mm-hmm. So when you're seeing 2 people go at it full speed, I mean, they're going at it full and making contact and collision But more often than not, like, I mean, it's a physical game where you get your nicks and stuff like that. But, I didn't break a bone until I was in high school, like late after I'd already been playing for like 5, 10 years. And then I didn't really break another bone until like much later on in my career. So who knows? Maybe that's genetics, but also I think that goes to, how you play the game.
I heard there's been studies in the rugby leagues, and in the UK we have rugby, which is no padded, but I mean your tackles seem to be harder, so that compensates. But the actual bone density of the players, if they've been playing since they're young, is actually higher than the average male who's not been running full speed into other average males.
Well, that's a good adaptation, I guess, to have. I mean, you look at I'm sure there's quite a few different studies about adaptations over time. And can you, specifically with bones, you can actually like thicken your bones. I think I was watching some sort of YouTube video or something like that where, they had monks out in the mountains and they train and like sharpen their bones and stuff to be able to like cut through rock or like something crazy like that.
Yeah, I've watched a bunch of those videos.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, but like your body can naturally adapt to a certain amount of stress that you put it under.
Yeah, I mean, I was at the park the other day, and I thought I was like, mind you, I had this problem when I was younger as well. But I mean, I was doing monkey bars, and I was doing it. It was about a 20-meter long monkey bar, and it goes up and goes sideways and goes down. So I went up to the slant ones, and then I went to the side ones, and I started doing two at once, and I thought I'm doing all right. And all of a sudden, I went really hard, and I don't know what happened to the muscle, but it just took out the bone. And then I managed to get it back in at the park. I was kind of embarrassed because there was lots of kids running around. And then I managed to get home okay, and it was fine. But then I went to sit down in a massage bed. Oh, what a bad idea. And it does all these things. And so it was 10 times worse at home than it was at the park. It came out, and I just could not get it back in again. And being in Ukraine, we didn't have anesthesia. So my father-in-law had to go and buy anesthesia to get the doctor to relax the muscles to get it back in. It was like a bad dream, man. I don't know if have you ever dislocated your shoulder before?
I have while playing football, but I mean, there is no nice version of dislocating anything on your body, right? Like it is going to be painful. And, I think it's probably a good thing that it's painful because it's your brain saying that's out of place. You should fix that.
Yeah.
And until it goes back in, and even when it goes back in, it's still kind of like, doesn't feel good. Kind of like when you jam your fingers or something like that too. Like it's just until it's back, and even when it's back, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah, cool, mate. So and let's go into more like later on in your probably college / in a TED talk. You talk about this point where you got a scholarship after you played a game with your broken collarbone, and oh, by the way, did that affect your throwing that much? I mean, does the collarbone breaking affect the muscles?
Well, actually, so here's how crazy that moment was. Because you're referring to back when I'm talking about in the talk of, the second play of the game, and like the second game of the season, my senior year, where everything's all in line. I'm rolling out and I get caught in the chest by a D tackle. He lands on top of me. And it's easily over 7 pounds of pressure, and that's all it takes to break a collarbone. 7 pounds of pressure. 7 pounds of pressure vertically.
You mean if I just push my collarbone and 7 pounds, it can break?
So 7 pounds, not this direction. 7 pounds this direction.
Let's do an experiment here.
Yeah, exactly. So not this way, that's but crazy, 7 pounds of pressure outside here.
Really?
So a lot of times when you see guys fall on their shoulder or fall on the side or kind of like run and then dive and they get caught right there, that is typically when, kind of like if you were to have a wishbone on a table and then like press on the top and it snaps, that's where the 7 pounds of pressure goes. And that's what happened in my collarbone. But what miraculously made it so that way I could still throw and do all those things, because normally you would not be able to do that, is that when it broke, it came back together where it was just off register by a little bit. So I was in a lot of pain, but because it was still kind of like pressed together from like the muscles in my neck and my shoulder, that made it where I was able to continue playing for a little bit until the pain just got to like the next level of unbearable. So I was able to like throw with it. I threw 2 more touchdown passes in that game. But like once the adrenaline wore off over halftime, I was like, I can't go back out there. Like it just hurts too bad. I was walking around with my shoulder down like this. And that was the end of my season for the most part.
Did you think it would be the end of your career at that point?
Yeah. I mean, if you remember back in my talk, I was getting phone calls from a lot of D1 scholarship like colleges. I was talking to Ohio State and Florida, and like the big ones that you definitely want to go to as far as like these are Power 5 conferences. And then after I got hurt, my phone went silent. Like I had a couple D1 AA offers, which is kind of like the next level, semi-pro. But in my eyes, it kind of felt like it was all over. Mm-hmm. And then I get that one phone call that changed everything to go to the University of Oregon.
Yeah, and what you drove 2 hours each way? How did that work?
Oh well, since you're not in America, so geography I gotta probably like explain a little bit more specifically. So I moved from Nebraska, which is in the center of the country, all the way out to Eugene, Oregon, which is on the West Coast in like the upper left of America. And so then in Eugene, the distance between Eugene, where the college is at, to Portland is 2 hours. And so that's where I had to drive 2 hours every day, because me being really smart and then also wanting to do design in order to be up here with Nike and all the other big corporations and lots of leaders in design, I had to drive from, college town in Eugene, Oregon, all the way up to the city in Portland, which is like up the highway farther north.
See, and design, I didn't do a design degree, but what does that involve?
I mean, so I was a product design major, and pretty much what product designers or industrial designers or designers of any type of field is, they communicate visually through products and graphics for the most part. So when someone is designing something, they essentially are intentionally creating something to communicate or intuitively convey how it's meant to be used, and to kind of understand the story of how you're meant to relate to it visually.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And by that time, you weren't playing for the college team, right? You were, or were you both?
I was doing both. That's what was like super crazy about it. So with football in America, it's an incredibly rigorous schedule. So I was getting up at like 5 a.m. to then go to the field. We'd lift, work out, train. Then I'm like at the practice center from 5:30 a.m. all the way till 11:30 noon every single day. And then I would, in that little span of time between like 11:45 and 12 o'clock would be when our first class would start, take a shower, and then try and get to class. I'd have one class that was down in Eugene, which I did like a economic history class. That was a tough class. Oh my goodness. Talk about dry. All the white papers of, money spread across continents. But then I would get in the car, drive 2 hours all the way up to Portland through traffic and everything. And that's when I would do my design courses, where they had a full makers lab studio space in there where we build stuff. And, I have my sketches and everything up on the wall, very similar to how I have now. And I would learn from the best of the best on how to make great product, and honestly do a lot of things that would help innovate in my own sport later on.
So were you doing a lot of hand drawings, or was it mostly learning how to do things on computers for like CAD for products and clothing?
Oh, so both. I mean, pretty much, like I like to think of design as like a language. And so there's kind of like all different dialects and aspects of the language that you can use to speak. Some of that is in physical form, as far as like if you can like vacuum mold or make a shape that conveys like how your hands are meant to relate to it. Graphics are essentially like hieroglyphs. They're symbols that intuitively, because we've seen, either birds or the sky or different shapes, triangles, squares built together, that conveys different meanings from, cultural society as you go across different spectrums. And however you can best convey the idea is the medium that you use. So I have done a lot of like hand sketching. Sometimes some things you can fudge in sketching that you can't really figure out until it's like fully tangible in your hand. So that's when you got to go make it and be like, all right, this is the shirt on body, and this is how big it is like actually on your chest as it relates to people who are taller and people who are shorter, and you can see it in a 3D space.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Cool. So you had a first job at Nike, which ended because of the recession, and then you got your dream job at Nike, and then you also trialed for the Bears. I think, was it the Chicago Bears?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is, I know that was like such a crazy experience also, because like, so when I first graduated and it was kind of like, all right, football career at Oregon is done. You're a senior, you're trying to get ready to go and get drafted. That's when you're kind of in this limbo of like, all right, either I could get picked up and moved anywhere across the country, or I might be getting ready to start my own life doing whatever I want to do. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was kind of like this choice between like, okay, I'm trying to finish up my fine arts degree in Portland, where either I'm going to be a full-time designer and go down this path, or I'm going to get a phone call from a sports club and they're going to say, we want you here. And that's going to completely divert my life path. So being there and then kind of like getting to where I was going to be, eventually I got my degree, and it was still very much on the fence of like, all right, are you going to go to design full time, or are you going to go in a sports full time? And that's when I first got the first job at Nike, which I then ended up, it was contract and temporary, and I got laid off, which was absolutely painful. But because of the hard work that I had already done at that job and the connections that I made, some other group was like, hey, if they don't want you, we definitely want you. And that parlayed into all the awesome stuff I'm doing now.
Did you feel like God was helping you through all this time, or you just felt you just had to do everything in your own strength?
100%.
Yeah. I
have no idea how I would have been able to do it if I wasn't a person of faith. I mean, you look at, success in life and obstacles is like this, right? And I remember specifically that night before, it was the week before signing day. I had no offers except for the D1 AA ones, which are like lower tier. And I remember getting on my knees and praying and saying, God, if this is really how my life is meant to go, just please give me the strength to walk this path. And it was literally after that prayer, probably like 15 minutes later, I got a phone call from Scott Frost saying, we'd like for you to go to the University of Oregon. Are you in?
What?
Yes.
Seriously, man.
Seriously. And from there, it's continued to be a walk of faith. Even getting into design at the University of Oregon, they were kind of like, doing football, which is a very high commitment sport, and it's not flexible in any way. You're not doing it by yourself. Like, you have to be there with your team. And then also doing design, which is very labor intensive, time intensive. Like, you need to have your mind and everything focused, present into that, that art. They're like, you don't have enough time to do that. And that's when I was like, well, you know what? I've been living by faith this whole time. So let's see if we can make it happen. Watch what God can do.
Mate, I still, during this pandemic, I say that prayer a lot, man. It's given me the strength to keep going through this, because sometimes I find that we get ahead of ourselves. We start thinking that we are so great, and that was a bit like me when everything was fine in London, and everything, it was a programmer's paradise in London, But the market just died, and but even if it's not a good market, I found that before I came to know the Lord, I was a gamer. I could have been a pro gamer if there was a game. I was playing games a lot. I used to thrash on my friends at Halo and all that stuff. And I didn't have any desire to really study. But when I came to find the Lord, I found that at university, there was many times where I would be reading statistics and, biology, and I would get stuck, in my mind. I'd be like, this is just too much for me. And I'd basically pray, say, God, look, if you don't help me to get through this, I will fail, And then it sort of took away the burden of the performance, because then it's on God to help me. And I always found a peace that came after that, which is probably, it's God showing us that we need his strength, because I even read in the Bible today when Jesus is talking about without him, we can do nothing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Philippians 4:13, you can do all things in Christ who strengthens you.
Yeah.
It's important to actually, give those things up to Christ as well, as far as, we can do all things in Christ. What can we actually do by ourselves? I mean, the very few things that we can do by ourselves are we get to think our own thoughts and, give our efforts. But everything that we do and accomplish and achieve is through the grace of God. I mean, how many things are actually within your control? You can't make the seeds grow out of the ground, but yet we can put them in there and have faith that God can spring forth fruit. Mm-hmm. And these many things. We can go out and be generous and do good works, but do people actually receive them? Do they even make an impact? Does anybody notice them? It's 100% through the grace of God that anything even happens. So it
says in the scripture that all things are held together by Jesus, including all the quarks and atoms and the strong force and electrons. And this word grace is the Greek word charis, which is, I think it means unmerited favor, but also the word grace means to me power, like a generator. And I can tell when someone once asked me on one of my communities, are you on Adderall, Nikos? Because I guess I do quite a lot of things, but and this Adderall, I could have, if I was wanting to give him a religious answer, I could say, well, actually, it's God's grace that helped him to do this, the power output. But the thing is, if you depend on God's grace, right, when God's grace is not there, you turn off and you're flat. And it's kind of a risky place to be, because in a sense, you've got all these plans ahead that you want to do, but you realize that if God doesn't provide that energy, then you're going to fall flat on your face. But then it's also good because it keeps you humble, which keeps you in the flow of basically a relationship with God.
Absolutely. That is timely word, I think, probably for a lot of people, myself included, of, go, go, go. And especially in this time of, being at home, I'm sure a lot of people, like myself included, their minds are going with I could be doing this and I could be more productive with this, and I don't have a community anymore, so I'm getting more time back. But has God really called you to using that time for this, that, and the other, any other ideas that you have? Like you said, the energy that you thrive on, as far as, being able to act within the Spirit. If you try and act outside of the Spirit, you fall flat.
I think this pandemic has given us opportunity to say prayers that really matter. Like if you're going to be homeless soon, unless God turns up, or your family's going to be homeless, then prayers really take on a new meaning. And many of us, we were basically coasting on just the economies, the first world economies. But right now it's an uncertain time we're in, and we don't know what the outcome is going to be of furlough schemes ending, of lack of money printing. We don't know what's going to happen with inflation. It's a very uncertain time. The politics is going crazy. There's division. You could spend all day long going mad listening to all semi-conspiracy series and actual conspiracy facts. It's a time. I was listening to Joe Rogan the other day as well, and he's starting to get worried, and his guests are getting worried. Everyone's going mad in a sense, but
yes.
People. There's this talk about this Great Reset, this World Economic Forum but I think the real great reset comes in our hearts when we realize that we do need to depend on God for everything. And I'm just throwing all this stuff out there because I think people are in a place ready to open themselves up to God, and before, and they were just, I don't know, self-made men. And I think the word self-made men is a dangerous word. It's a dangerous place to be, to think anyone's self-made. I have a respect for you if you're self-made, because I'm certainly not self-made.
Yeah. I mean, self-made to me personally is a fallacy. No one is self-made. If you are a human being who was a baby at one point in time, someone cared for you. And, someone taught you the structure, someone taught you how money works, someone taught you how to count. Self-made is kind of like, it's a fallacy. Like, to say that you are self-made is a very like figurative term of saying I did it without a miracle. And I think like, I don't know, it's a very shallow line that people draw as far as like, did you have venture capital money, or did you have some big bank corporation that was already established that gave you a push? And I understand like that's like the common delineation, but quote unquote self-made, no one is self-made. There's always been people in everyone's lives who's helped you get to a certain point, especially if you are young and had any type of success, even like self-taught, especially now people are self-taught, but you've probably watched some YouTube videos and then done some courses. There's very few people who could say like, oh yeah, I was isolated as an Aboriginal and I found this artifact and then self-taught myself to do this thing completely devoid of any other teaching. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, what if you're a self-made man? I once heard a quote: "He who dies with the most money in the bank wins." What good is that money going to do to you in the grave, man?
I mean, if anybody tried the hardest to figure that out, I'd say the Egyptians did. I mean, you see their big pyramids and tombs, and they got as much cash as anybody could possibly have imagined. The richest people in Babylon, all them folks are not here anymore. Their stuff is, but they're somewhere else. So I don't know if it really helped them out in the end.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back into your practical life here. I'm not saying God's not practical, but these things that you work in your day life. So I'm just interested, what were you doing for 2 hours in the car? How did you manage to make that time productive, or was it not productive? You didn't have audiobooks back in the day, did you?
There, like Audible and all that was very like in the infantile stages. So like, social media definitely isn't what it was. Like I want to say Instagram had probably just been a thing for like a year back when I was doing all that type of stuff. Twitter had just came out. I feel like super old even saying that. It's like all that stuff was like very, very early internet. YouTube was around, but it wasn't like as robust as it was now. And plus, when I was driving out in the woods, like, it was hard to really have anything consistent that you needed to connect to the internet to. So a lot of times it's like me being there with my thoughts with God. And I think, not necessarily that this conversation has to curtail back into faith, but one thing that I've learned over the course of time is in productivity, there's a really good quote that talks about time management isn't necessarily about managing your time. It's about managing yourself, and specifically your emotions. And oftentimes you don't need as much time as you think you might need. And then also when it comes to acting in faith, there's only a certain amount of things that you can do. And then you can let room for God to do the rest. And I think that's been like a theme of some of the things that we've talked about, specifically living in faith, is, I could panic about like, what am I going to do without these 2 hours, or like these 4 hours every single day that I'm just going to be in the car.
Oh
You know,
man.
is it wasted? Is it wasted taking time to be still and be with myself? I would say no. You know, there's times where I sang, there were times where I praised, there are times where I was silent for a full 2 hours. There were times where I had really big ideas where I was like, I need to pull a car over and write some of these down because things are being revealed and like I'm having breakthroughs, right? But I think there's something special and I think extremely crucially important. If you look at like all the different self-help books and times that people said they had their biggest breakthroughs or when they have time for reflection. And I think that was very special, is that I got to see the significance of what that 2 hour time, even though I had to drive the whole time, that was dedicated time to reflect. And I think because I had time to think about, you know, what am I going to do next? How am I going to show up? What do I need to get done? And actually have that space to just reflect on preparation of getting to the destination and also coming home, being able to get prepared for the next day. I think that was highly impactful, which, I mean, I don't know if there's a way that anybody else could like specifically dedicate that much time just towards preparation and like not doing something, but just be mentally focused and reflecting on what's going to happen. I think it was definitely a large contributor to my success. And I think also provided room for what God could do in my life.
And so how many years were you driving 2 hours back and forth?
So it wasn't just 1 year, which was definitely plenty to be doing that.
Okay.
And I was about probably like during the actual course of the football season. So pretty much like 3-4 months of solid week after week, driving up, driving back, do the class and reflect. And then also like it was my senior year and everything. So there's like all these emotions and, you know, we had a pretty good run on the field too. So it was like, we're flying out and doing all these things. It was crazy. Like, I don't know how I could have done it without grace.
Fantastic, mate. Applaud you. So I did a bit of bio sports science university. So I mean, I could probably talk to you about your training for the next 4 hours, but probably my indulgence might not last that long. So you're working on I believe NFL uniforms right now. Can you let me know a little bit about what goes into making a uniform?
Oh yeah. So I mean, the uniform process itself is really, really interesting. So specifically, it's kind of like with any other client project. You have a client, which in our case is the club, and they're an external partner, and they come in and they say, you know, this is what we're looking at. We're looking at kind of rebranding, where we want to change the face of our team, our uniform, and we're looking to hit XYZ metrics, et cetera, et cetera. And what's really interesting about NFL uniforms is like the uniform itself, especially within like some of these really prestigious, like traditional clubs, that's almost as iconic as the team logo. Like the uniform is synonymous with what that team represents to such a high degree that some people recognize the uniform far before they even would recognize the actual like logo mark of the club. So it's a really big deal. And they're very much like meticulous, and anything that's been long-standing for a long time, like a lot of the NFL uniforms have been around for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. People are very much like, don't change it. Means a lot to me. So there's a high level of scrutiny. But
on you go.
Oh, no, good. What's your question?
So do you design the helmet, socks, shoes, socks, everything, or what parts of the uniform do you work on?
We do everything. So I would liken it to kind of like designing a car where, you know, you have like the exterior, interior, and all the engineering and stuff that goes in. For uniforms, you know, you have the helmet, then you also have, the jersey number typography, the markings that are on the shoulders and top yokes, etc., the cuts and everything that go into the innovation, because we always bring the latest and greatest innovation with our fabrics and performance materials. Then you got the pants, and then of course you have like the color scheme and systems, and some different teams change their color altogether. Some like to have different combinations. Some have like iconic traditional combinations. Then the NFL sock is like a really big deal. So people have like their custom unique sock. Then you fit that out to cleats and everything. But it's definitely, there's a lot of moving pieces to the entire thing. And as like the uniform designer, you're kind of the quarterback to the whole system. As far as, I have a large team that I get to work with. We have partners at the NFL to, of course, like manage and kind of oversee and make sure everything fits to the guidelines of the league. And then we have the club, who's the client themselves. And we essentially work in tandem to make something awesome.
I don't want to push you into revealing too many trade secrets here, but I've got quite a technical mind. So are you allowed to tell me what software you use? Is it a software that I like to talk about the software that you use for this?
Oh, of course. I mean, there's industry standard softwares out there. Like we use the Adobes to render and do all different types of stuff. But yeah, I would say like my personal setup of working with things, uniforms and stuff, is like the Adobe Creative Suite. That's pretty much the industry standard. So you're looking at like Illustrator and Photoshop and those kind of softwares. We can pretty much do everything in Illustrator, Photoshop, and we also use like Keynote and different presentation softwares. But for the most part, like, yeah, we're just artistry doing the whole thing.
So are you getting like 3D models that you're importing to Photoshop, or are you actually building 3D models with vertices modeling software within? I've used Blender for a little bit of my time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, pretty much 3D wise, we don't have to do a lot of 3D. Like traditionally, I mean, just as far as like the pace that we're working at, we can do a lot with photo manipulation and stuff like that. So as far as getting something visual to have like just a visual representation of like, this is what it's going to look like. Similar to like any type of mock-up that you can find on the internet today. We have our own, Nike trademark secret mock-ups that we use. And, that just helps us further articulate exactly what we feel like it's going to look like in the future. We definitely also do some 3D stuff for when it's appropriate. But for the most part, we do whatever the product needs.
Mm-hmm. So I guess in uniforms, there's only a limit to what the viewer is going to be able to see on a match. But I guess there's a lot of close-up stuff as well, that when the camera is full screen, like me, then they're going to see every small detail in the uniform. So people might think that, hey, it's just a big block of yellow and white stripes, but there's probably I'd imagine a lot of work when people zoom in. That's going to be really a lot of thought has to go into that process,
Oh, yes. I mean, the angles of the markings and everything, oftentimes there's perforations and extra breathability. There's fabric changes and stuff like that. It is an exact science that we definitely, spend a lot of time on. Like the process, I worked on the Los Angeles Chargers jersey that just came out earlier or in 2020 when they unveiled the new stadium and everything. And, they're a pretty vibrantly colored team. That process to design the jersey, make the jersey, and then do the promo, release the jersey, and then for it to actually get on field is about a 1.5 2 year process.
Are the different, so not all the uniforms are the same fabrics. Each team has its own type of fabrics and perforation styles. So to kind of like further iterate on that, we have like a base chassis. So within our chassis, which is kind of like the body, if you would, of a car, we have our latest and greatest in innovation. So typically
we unveil what is the next great innovation, year after year, whatever cadence that we've been working on, as far as like, this is the latest and greatest. And we have some teams who are like, we're ready to switch over to what is the latest and greatest in what Nike has put out. And then, we have some teams are like, we're good with what we've previously been doing. We're just not ready for an update quite yet.
Mm-hmm. So I'm throwing some questions in here, but you might not know the answer to, but like a t-shirt for me, since I've been growing up, I've run pretty much the same technology, but how far can fabric technology go? And like the last 50 years has been, well, I don't know how long NFL's been around, but I can imagine the fabrics have changed over time. Is there much room for new fabrics, or have we pretty much reached peak technology with all that can be invented has been invented?
Well, I mean, there's definitely like plenty of room for improvement. I think right now, probably the biggest thing that you could easily point to is recycled content. So you look at your t-shirt cotton blend, I'm assuming, or your polo, it's probably a mix of synthetic polyester plus, a couple other different things blended in it. There are things that are blended into the actual fabric itself that can make it more stretchy or more rigid, or wick moisture better, or make it actually warmer, or make it more breathable. You can also expand it and put a mesh in there. You can change the texture of it by putting it into like a waffle or changing the knit as it comes together. So there's definitely a lot of versatility as far as what you can do with an initial fabric. And then also, like if you really go down into like the mill garment process, you can treat fabrics with different types of coatings. As far as I'm sure the most famous one is like DWR and Gore-Tex, where you treat that with like a coating, and then you can dump water on it, and the fabric doesn't absorb any moisture at all. So I think like those type of innovations, as we continue to recycle fabric and repurpose and reuse, there's also opportunity for maybe one day in the future, when you've worn a t-shirt out as many times as you want to and you're done with it, you'll be able to wash it in some solution, and it'll just completely dissolve into water or something like that. And then you can repurpose it into whatever else. Like that's probably the future of where we're going, is, instantly biodegradable everything.
Wow. So what is it that all my Hugo Boss t-shirts and Armani t-shirts, well, the ones that I pay more than $30 for or £30 for, they look great. They still look great. This is a Ted Baker one. They just last longer. But you buy a cheap t-shirt, it starts falling apart and shrinking, and the color goes away after 10 washes. What is it about these more expensive garments that makes them just last longer?
Well, probably exactly like what I said. The fabric is nicer, depending on like what grade of the mill that they use, as far as like where they got their cotton from. That can contribute to how thick the fibers are spun, or like if they're kind of like the premium of the crop, if you will. The way they treat it, whether they put any type of coating or they specifically wash the garments before they stitch them together, that contributes to it. How they stitch the whole entire thing together also contributes to where you're going to see wear and tear, as far as what type of seam stitches they do on the inside, if they do overlock stitches, if they reinforce their stitches, if they double tack, and all those other different ways that kind of like the tailors actually build the garment together contribute to how well the garment also stays together.
Okay, cool. So what teams are you working on now? Can you share that?
I can't share specifically what teams I'm working on right now at the moment. I can only talk about what's already been out. And I mean, to kind of like officially announce what I'm doing right now, I currently have a couple things in the pipeline when it comes to, sports jerseys getting ready to come out. But I've officially transitioned into a new part of Nike, where I work in the Nike Lab Catalyst group. So if you've heard of kind of like the entertainment sport division where we do like external collabs and things like that. That is like the new division, which is more fashion centric, where I'm working in now.
Yeah. Cool. So what is your strength when it comes to the design?
I would say my strength is like conceptual storytelling and also really getting out people's brands. I think one of my, I guess like one of my core strengths is being very deeply empathetic. And so being able to have high empathy and then cross that over to design as a language, I can help people kind of like speak and articulate a visual graphic vision that speaks directly to what their brand is usually about. So I've been able to do that with a lot of different football teams, you know, other different brand clients, and kind of tell their story graphically through visuals.
Cool, man. So what problem do you best solve for others?
I would say brand strategy as is probably like the problem that I solve best. So if you're coming to me and you're looking at like, hey, we're thinking about changing our entire look up entirely as far as like we're not connecting with a certain demographic, or we feel like our numbers should be X and we're looking to do Y. How do we go about either adding a new product? How do we go about changing our look? Like what do I need to do to get the attention of the right people that I'm trying to serve? I think that is the best problem that I definitely help people solve.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I've been following the news, and like there's been a little bit of a social media storm right now, and do people ask you lots of questions about what's going on with all this like 666 shoes and stuff, or is that?
Oh yes, I've definitely gotten quite a few questions of that. So Nike did not put those shoes out. Actually, this is Shoe Customizer, which I don't know if you guys have a ton over in the UK or in Europe, but specifically with Shoe Customizers, they go out, they take Nike original product, and they just kind of buy up as many stock items as they can, and then they can resell customized versions. So someone customized a 666 version of our Air Max 97, I believe. And so like they're allowed to do that because within customizations, like legally, and you know, I'm not a lawyer, so I have to put that disclaimer out, but legally you can customize shoes, footwear, garments, materials, whatever. And within a certain amount of quantities and within a certain amount of like leeway, it constitutes as art. But if you're mass producing, which is essentially what they were doing, is we're selling a significant amount of whatever, that counts as kind of like infringing on Nike rights to their own product and how it's going to be sold.
Yeah, I'm really interested in legal stuff. I'm not a lawyer, but I started a Discord server, which is we have a podcast for it where we talk about law and all that kind of stuff, man. So cool. So do you want to recommend some books that you
yes
like?
So while we're on the trend of faith, I'm sure you've heard of John Maxwell. I would highly recommend his book 15 Laws of Growth. I would say that's like one that's been very impactful to me personally, and probably what helped me continue to grow and also like develop during that time when I was not only like in school but doing uniforms and things like that. I would also say The Business of Design. So like creative strategy and the business of design. This has been an awesome book that has truly helped me, and I think a lot of creatives in thinking business and design and how you kind of pair those two together. Because I think a lot of folks, when they are fresh out of school, which I talk to a lot of people who are like fresh out of school, they're new to a career, jumping into, you know, other different entrepreneurial venture, they don't fully understand business and where they fit into the business. And I think oftentimes, like specifically with designers, it's just, you know, are you in the marketing side or are you in the product creation side? And so a lot of what I've just shown you in uniforms and this, that, the other is kind of like a blending of the two, or specifically as designing the uniform, it is a product creation engine, but then also it acts as kind of like part of the brand and marketing because it is so visible and is iconic and fits in that box that has to kind of speak to that language.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you get to meet a lot of NFL players now?
Oh yeah. I mean, I have lots of friends and teammates who are still actually playing in the NFL. So I have connections there, but then also when it comes to like sharing product and things like that.
It must be great for like business development for Nike to have an actual NFL player. I mean, I don't imagine they come across designers who could actually run in the field with them.
Yeah, I haven't really tried to take any bets on like, I bet I could beat you in a race and then roll out in my sneakers quite yet. But it definitely helps. And I think also the way that I see sport and how design can affect it, I think it just further adds to that level of empathy that I get to have as far as, what is it like walking in those shoes? What are the pain points and how you can design and fix those problems?
Do you have any friends in the NFL right now that have been taken out with injury?
I mean, recently, fortunately, it's the off season right now, so hopefully everyone's recovering and stuff. But Marcus Mariota, he was one of my guys. He was my quarterback actually back when I was playing. Kenyon Barner. I mean, right now I'm paying a lot of attention to the trade stuff because they're getting ready for the draft and everything. And so I've had some teammates move from LA to Cleveland and, other different places like Chicago to Kansas City and things like that. So most of my guys are rotating, but thank goodness nobody is significantly injured at the moment.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious about the training. When you says you were training, when you were at college playing, how many days a week were you training?
So we would train 5 days a week, play on Saturday, and then have a recovery day where we're active recovery on Sunday.
So 5 days a week. How much working out are you doing on any given training day?
2 to 3 hours.
I mean, if I go to the gym for 2 or 3 hours, 2 or 3 times a week, I feel like I'm overtraining. So how do you avoid overtraining at that intensity?
I mean, be 21 years old. Like,
I'll put that on my to-do list, right?
Yeah, I would say being as young as we were, that definitely contributes to not overtraining. But then also, you look at all the stuff that we do in the off season, like that 5 days a week is like pretty peak performance time where we're peaking in the fall. And like I said, we only do it for like 3 to 4 meets during the duration of the season. Then, you get a little bit of a breather. And then when you do the off season, that's where you really ramp up as far as like getting to that level of capacity where you can handle that load. Like I would say, like if you haven't been in the gym for 3 to 4 hours every day, it's going to be really hard that first couple times you do it.
Yeah.
But if you've been training for 14 years, like I was at that point, like it's not as dramatic.
Cool. So just as we come to a close here, I'm just wondering, how do people connect with you if they want to talk about work stuff?
Oh, yeah, you can connect to me via LinkedIn. My name is Daryle, Daryle Hawkins on LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter at I'm Daryle Hawkins. I am Daryle Hawkins, same spelling. I'm also on Instagram at dhawk16_. And beyond that, there's also my website, darylehawkins.com, which I'm getting ready to release in the near future.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. Buy your domain, man. I bought my domain for 10 years and I used to have all sorts of websites, but and also had 2 podcasts, which didn't have my name in it, but I was finding it hard trying to centralize everything and then just keep everything in sync. I had a domain name called Quantum.js. But basically I just bought NikosKatsikanis.com and I'm just sticking subdomains in front of it. So I've got one for the show, which takes my 2 old podcasts, show.nikoskatsikanis.com. I've got community.nikoskatsikanis.com, which is just a Discord server. And I've got I've probably got some more ideas under the entrepreneurial ideas. It's cheaper just having one domain and putting subdomains on them.
Right.
But I think that personal branding for me, it was time to just buy my own domain name, and just like even the name of the podcast. I mean, Learn with Us was nice. I had nice growth. Influences Cafe, it didn't really have the same growth, but it was growing. But I always felt it was a bit presumptuous to put my own name in front of the podcast. But after just seeing some of the most popular podcasters out there, I mean, most of them have all got their name on the podcast somewhere. Joe Rogan and John Shapiro, and I'm definitely not comparing myself to those guys, but I mean, it's just a common thing to do, put your name in front of it, and I don't know.
Well, I think it's important because it's also like if you're going to be on the podcast, you got to have the draw. Like, it's your visual expression. You're also able to communicate and question specifically and use your style. Like, what else would describe it better than your name?
Yeah. I've kind of gotten used to it now, but when I started a podcast 2 years ago, I would never have put my name on the podcast, man. I used to kind of laugh at people that did put their name on the podcast, but I've went and done it now. So.
You finally owned it then.
Yeah, man. Cool. So can you share any of your plans for the next year or two?
Oh, man.
This new website you have?
Yes, so I'm getting ready to release my website. I'll have, detailed expressions of some of my work. And then also, I really love helping out creatives and, like I said, small business owners as far as like establishing their brand and kind of how to set guidelines and set practices. So that way, if you want to, take your booklet of stuff, go to a graphic designer or go to a marketer or, have someone else help you, and then you can scale your business as a solopreneur. These are the things specifically bulleted out that you need to have that's going to expedite your time and then also just help get your ideas out into the world. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm looking at. We'll have lead generators and a couple of different blog posts, talk about monetizing your craft and how to also, take your creativity to the next level and just help creatives continue to be innovators in a way that I think can better impact the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. And whereabouts are you based? Are you in Portland?
Yep. Portland, Oregon for now.
How are things on the ground there, man? I haven't really seen it in the news much, but what's going on?
Oh, yeah. We did have our fair share of time in the news, but the sun is still shining. It's not on fire outside my window. It's surprisingly, you can't believe everything that you see on the news. Yeah. You can believe like a decent amount because most of it's real, but that doesn't mean that the whole world's on fire.
I've got a friend. Yeah.
I was going to say it's still sunshine. And then, it's like they only videotape like this small portion of the area. And then the rest of it is still blue sky. And, people are still shaking hands and high-fiving 6 feet apart.
Yeah, I'm struggling with the whole what sides to believe. And like I said before, I've had people that are very much in the whole believing in the racism side of things, Black people, mm-hmm. and I've got people that are Black that are very much against all this narrative. And I'm trying to find what is the truth. And I think you can have multiple truths because you can have people growing up with the gun pointed at their head 3 times, and they're never going to forgive the white policemen. They're always going to be angry, and I can relate to that. But you get people that have not had that experience and they've grown up fine. So it's, I don't know what, I'm genuinely worried about America. I don't want to wake up one day and see, I'm in Ukraine right now, and we have about 1/10 of the country in war. Well, at the moment it's a truce. But war is if America falls into a civil war, we will have the free world will be gone. And I'm really worried about America, man. I really am. If I wake up and the civil war breaks out in America,
I don't think anybody necessarily wants civil war necessarily, but at the same time, it's room for us to have faith. I think, like you said, there feels like there's a greater reset that's happening. Technology and people are beginning to evolve at a level that, if we didn't feel like we were evolving faster, it's continuing to evolve faster. And I think regardless of, where America sits in that structure, I would love, because I'm an American and I've grown up here and I love this place, like for America to continue to stand for the values that it's always meant to stand for. I think the idea of America has always been extremely noble as far as, liberty and justice for all. Like that was the precipice for the entire thing. And, we're being tested as far as like how much of that is hypocrisy, how much can you lean one way or the other, and do people still really believe that after everything that's happened? I think so. I think regardless of, political climate or things that happen, the way that the system can get tested, I think the cream will rise to the top, and the leaders hopefully will continue to show up, because I know that they're out there, ones that believe in liberty and justice for all and taking care of other people. And just the fact that we're able to have these conversations like this and continue to talk about, and like the vast majority of people are educated and able to speak in ways that continue to extend beyond, just our living rooms, and we're able to do podcasts and stuff like that. I think that is going to continue to make these messages grow, and the hunger for that isn't going to die anytime soon, as far as doing what's right and continue to stand up and build that free world that I know a lot of us want to have.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can totally I can relate to the words Black Lives Matter. For me, 100% Black Lives Matter. But I just finding that there's a polarizations happening between ideologies, and they're not talking to each other. And so what I want to do is, as Jesus says, be a peacemaker. I want to see people have peace. I don't want to see militias squaring up to each other and they have a hot war, or you have generals on whatever ideology they have getting their troops against each other. And I'm in Ukraine right now, and we have Russian tanks and goodness knows what lining up at the border, and it's the sides, they don't talk to each other, and you have like America talking to Ukraine, and Biden's bigging up Ukraine, and Putin's, I would rather people all got together and talked, but I mean, what's the chances of Putin and Zelensky and Biden sitting down in the same room and sorting this stuff out? So I don't know, what advice would you give to the peacemakers in America right now that want to try and calm things down a bit?
I mean, so this is me speaking, and a lot of me talking today has been just speaking me as an individual. My views don't necessarily represent Nike. I got to put that disclaimer out there. But I would definitely say that, and there's plenty of negotiators and people who understand that people want peace. And I think clearly there's other things at play as far as, pride and respect and just the natural emotions and ego that can come into moments like that, where you're representing a country and all the people that embody that country. And there's people who are wronged who will never forgive, right? And there's true hurt and big emotions that honestly, in any type of situation, like there's people who are not going to be happy regardless of whatever happens, or if peace happens or anything like that. But I think there's always room for grace, and there's always room for God to make a way. And, with any type of unrest, I think it goes back to the Bible, where, you go back to your brother, you repent, you ask forgiveness, and then you got to give grace. I think even with that, if it has to be like you're on your side, whatever side, like, you can forgive people and have grace. And that doesn't necessarily mean, you have to be buddied up, or, that hurt is necessarily going to go away instantaneously. But I think as people of faith, we always have to believe with full faith that healing can happen.
Yeah, because living with anger is stressful. I mean, I've been living with a bit of anger, and that's why I've gotten put in jail for couple of weeks off LinkedIn. Basically, I'm not anti-vax, but I'm anti taking away our rights. So basically, LinkedIn, I put a post up 3 weeks ago with I shared someone else's post. I didn't research the stats, and then LinkedIn flagged it as disinformation. And you just get really heated with people when it comes to like vaccine passports and you're writing stuff. So I've learnt my lesson with just like living with anger and stuff like that is not good. So yeah, man. No, this has been fun, mate. I really enjoyed talking to you, mate. I don't know if you have anything else you want to share, or if you want to. I mean, we can talk another time if you want as well. So.
Well, I appreciate you letting me come on your podcast. I'm very grateful to speak as Daryle Hawkins, the human being, Daryle Hawkins, the man of faith, and also Daryle Hawkins, the designer. And Nikos, I'm praying for you. I pray you success, and then also just that you continue to hear God's voice, and that He also just leads you as this podcast continues to unfold, and the information and wisdom that you can continue to garner and grow and continue to be a thought leader.
I need wisdom, man. I'm talking to some people that are very, very polarized, but they speak very authoritative in what they believe in. And I'm not afraid to tackle difficult topics, because I think that we have to talk about this difficult topic. We can't shy away from world situations, whatever it is. So I need wisdom to navigate this, because there's a lot of emotion. And if you interview somebody and you get some people can and you interview the wrong person for the wrong listener, they can really blast you when you go on it, and it's quite stressful when you get friends doing that. But I just want to get the facts out there, whatever it is, whoever it is I interview. I'm just trying to provide an open platform for free speech, and I might not agree with everything everyone says, and I don't. But I'm not talking about me and you. I've had a great time, but I mean, I'm not afraid of difficult issues, and I think that the issues will get even more challenging as time goes on, as if the world doesn't calm down. So yeah, I need wisdom, bro. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Well, I think there's plenty of room for wisdom, and there's plenty of things to learn, and I'm sure you will learn on this journey, my friend.
And tomorrow I'm going to buy a razor, because my excuse has been basically my shoulder's not been working, so I've not been shaving. You look pretty good with that beard as well, man. So.
Yeah, this is a lot thicker than my LinkedIn profile picture, that's for sure.
Yeah, thanks for sending me the screenshots from LinkedIn, because I'm in jail right now, and I don't know if I'll get back on LinkedIn, man. I don't know.
Hopefully you will be out of LinkedIn jail soon. And on top of that, you've learned your lesson now of like, check your facts and don't spread fake news, which is like the buzzword of the day now. Which, I've
learned my lesson. Do what my technical overlords want.
If that's what you want to call it, sure.
All right.
Well, thank you, Nikos.
Okay, everybody, that was Daryle Hawkins. Go check out his LinkedIn and keep a tabs on what he's doing. Fantastic man. And that's it for today. We'll see you soon in the Nikos Cats and Candice show. Thanks everybody for watching. Where's the stop recording button? There it is. Okay, bye-bye.